is Dr. T, Tucson Functional Medicine. I hope you're all doing well with this coronavirus and everything is going okay for you. It's given me an opportunity with telemed. Now, functional medicine has been using telemed for many years now, but you've never really heard about it with the traditional doctors. And so since we've got this coronavirus thing, we are actually hearing about it quite a bit. Doctors are starting to do it. So I just want to let people know that you do not have to live in Tucson to be a patient. We have patients all over America, and we have patients all over the world, actually. I was talking to a lady, I guess it was on Monday. She lives in Russia, and she's a patient. And she was talking about, because they're having the same thing, the coronavirus over there. And she was saying that if they're caught outside of their house, they can be arrested. That's how they're enforcing their stay at home and be careful kind of a thing. So kind of interesting, the different ways that we're doing it around the world. So, okay. So our topic, today is about digestive. It's about GERD, Gastric Esophageal Reflux disease is what we're actually going to be specializing, or not specializing, but focusing on today. So with 60% of Americans having a chronic disease, people are wasting more and more time in doctors' waiting rooms. Tucson Functional Medicine offers health programs to get to the cause of your health issue. So you spend less time in waiting rooms and more time enjoying the quality of life that you deserve. So this is our three-body system. This is how we work at work through the body. We work on the neuroendocrine system first, the GI. That's what this particular website's about, webinar is about, is GERD, the part of the GI system called GERD. And then we also move on to the detox system. This is how the body breaks down, and this is how we work on it. But today's webinar is very specific on one type of GI problem called gastroesophageal reflux. People call it heartburn. People call it GERD, reflux, I've heard it called. So there's a lot of names, but that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about overcoming this particular digestive challenge. Our next month's webinar is on digestion also. So many Americans have digestive problems that we're going to spend about 6 webinars this year. We've already done a couple on digestion, and we're going to do another one next month on digestion. Now, in the PDF handouts will be a bunch of different stuff, but one of them will be the flyer for next month's webinar, like we always do. And that'll be in there. We'll send you the PDF link for the PDFs. I've already got them built and ready, so we'll probably send them within the next, probably sometime today. So this is what we're talking about today: gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD in short. And what we're basically talking about is stomach acid being refluxed out of the stomach into the esophagus. And the thing that we're the most worried about with this is called Barrett's esophagitis. And what that is cancer of the esophagus. Now, the acid is very caustic. The reason it doesn't burn the stomach is the stomach has a mucosal lining on the stomach that protects the lining of the stomach from the acid, but your esophagus doesn't have this. And so if there's a little sphincter muscle, it's like a one-way valve on top of your stomach that allows the food to pass through your esophagus into your stomach, but isn't supposed to allow anything from the stomach back into the esophagus. So today's topic, we're going to talk about things that you can do or eat that that can cause a reflux. We're also going to talk about natural things that you can use if you're having reflux. And then we're also going to talk about how 2 MDs actually have pretty much solved reflux, and our traditional medical model is treating it exactly the opposite. And we'll talk about that before we're done today. So that's our process of how we're going to do it. So there is no coating on the inside of your esophagus. If you keep pushing acid back up through that sphincter muscle into the esophagus, it can start burning the sides of the esophagus and eventually cause cancer in the actual esophagus and esophageal. And that's what we're the most concerned about. Okay. So what is acid reflux? Now, some people can get this so bad. Like, I had a friend that went to the ER 3 different times because he thought he was having a heart attack. That's how bad the pain got. And it scared him so bad, he thought that he was actually having a heart attack. So acid reflux, most people call it heartburn. Okay, 4 to 10% of American adults have these symptoms every single day. 30% of adults in America have the symptoms of reflux at least once a week. So this is a pretty common problem. And when you think about as much as 10% of Americans having it, and that's about 34 million Americans are suffering from this every single day. So why do we have acid reflux? Okay, so there's many reasons that we can have it. We're going to talk about the most common one all the way towards the end. But according to Dr. Mark Hyman, probably most of you have heard him. He is a functional medicine doctor that is heading up the functional medicine program at Cleveland Clinic. But according to him, it's what you're eating, your lifestyle, stress, smoking, caffeine, alcohol, and bacterial overgrowth in your gut, and also food sensitivities are the things that can really cause this. So Dr. Hyman, he lists, you got to eat the right foods before you go to bed, eating too much food before you go to bed, being overweight, chronic stress, loss of magnesium, and we're also going to talk about a decrease of stomach acid. And that won't make any sense right now, but by the end of this thing, it will, because what we're talking about with acid reflux is too much acid, according to the medical doctors. But we'll talk about how two MDs, Dr. Gaby and Dr. Wright, have actually found that it's the opposite, but we'll talk about that. So what we're talking about is there's lots of things you can eat: stress, being overweight, loss of magnesium. So some of the things that you could maybe try if you have acid reflux is increase your magnesium, and that sometimes will help people have less GERD symptoms, right? And then stress is probably the biggie. And also, if your digestive system is not working correctly, that can also cause. Digestion is just a big assembly line, right? We put food in the mouth, we chew it up, it goes down a tube to our stomach, or we mix it up, and then we put it in the small intestines where we absorb a bunch of it, and then it goes to the large intestines, and then it comes out. So it's just a big assembly line. So if anything in that assembly line is not working correctly, everything beyond that point where things aren't working correctly is going to be messed up, okay? So what are the symptoms of acid reflux, okay? Symptoms of acid reflux, according to Mayo, here's what they list. It's a burning sensation in your chest. Now, this is why they call it heartburn. This is why some people, if it gets really bad, they think they may actually be having a heart attack. It's usually after eating, not before, and it's worse at night. Now, it could be that we eat the heaviest, densest, fattest meal at night. There's a saying where you should eat breakfast as a king or a queen. You should eat lunch as a nobleman or a noblewoman. And you should eat dinner as a pauper. And we've kind of switched it around. We eat our densest, fattest, most calorically dense meal at night when we don't really do anything to burn it off. And that can also be a cause of GERD. We're eating too much calories and too much fat before we go to bed, and then we never burn it off before we go to bed. So what else does Mayo list? Chest pain, difficulty swallowing, regurgitation of food or sour liquid. Now that's when some of the food may actually come back up that one-way valve, that sphincter muscle on top of the stomach. A sensation of a lump in your throat. Sometimes people say, I got something stuck in my throat, I just can't get swallowed. That can actually be a symptom of reflux disease. At nighttime, some of the unique symptoms at nighttime with acid reflux is chronic coughing, laryngitis, new or worsening asthma, and disrupted sleep. People will wake up when they got burning in their chest and then they can't get back to sleep. And all of those can be symptoms of acid reflux. So what can we actually do to overcome it? So we're going to give you some symptomatic things that you can do to overcome this if you do have it. And then, like I say, towards the end, we're going to actually talk about how we have to, if we really want to fix this and get to where we don't have this problem anymore, we're going to go through the steps of that. But there are several ways to overcome the symptoms and the complications caused by acid reflux. And we'll be taking a closer look at many of them to highlight some steps that can be taken at home for natural relief. Okay, here's what we're going to be covering: diet and food allergies, lifestyle triggers, stress. Let's begin with diet. So what foods should you avoid to not have acid reflux or GERD? Okay. A healthy GERD diet. Now you can actually Google that online. It's just called a healthy GERD, G-E-R-D diet. It's an online resource with many answers for GERD sufferers. So they go into a lot more detail about different foods and how they cause different problems. We're not going to have near enough time to go through that, but that is a great resource that you can use. So again, it's healthy GERD diet, and GERD is G-E-R-D. One of the biggest things for GERD is spicy foods. Now, I live in Arizona. Spicy is kind of synonymous with where I live. We put peppers in everything, and so spicy can cause it, because spicy foods, hot spicy foods, cause a relaxation of that sphincter muscle, which is just a round muscle. The muscle around your mouth, the muscle around your eye, these are all sphincter muscles. So any muscle that surrounds something can be tightened down. That's what the sphincter muscle is on top of the stomach. You have one on the top of the stomach to keep stuff in the stomach from going back up in the esophagus. You have one at the bottom of the stomach to keep foods in the stomach so it doesn't run into the small intestines. Then you have one at the end of your small intestines to keep food in the small intestines so it doesn't go into the large intestines. And each one of these is like a doorway that is opened when it is ready to be opened, so food can move from the stomach into the small intestines. And there's all kinds of things that have to happen along that way for the food to be able to be released from one part of the digestive tract into the next. Other foods that can really cause this problem: trans fats and high fat foods. So this is why it's almost always worse at night, because most Americans eat more fat at dinner time than probably any other meal during the day. If you eat fast food or something at lunchtime, that might be high in the fat, but we eat our most calorically dense and fattest food at nighttime. And that's one of the problems, like what we were talking about earlier, is we don't have the time to burn that stuff off before we go to bed. Okay. We talked about hot food, spicy food, hot food, actually heat hot. So a really hot coffee or really hot tea or soup or anything like that, because again, heat and spice can cause that sphincter muscle to relax, which will prevent keeping the food in the stomach. Food and beverages, let food and beverages cool a little bit before you drink them, especially at night, right? You don't want to drink really hot coffee or really hot tea or anything like that. Some other foods, oops, what did I do here? Sorry, there we go. Some other foods that can really cause this problem is mint and chocolate. So mint is probably one of the worst foods to relax a sphincter muscle. Okay, not just the sphincter muscle on your top of your stomach, but any sphincter muscle you have in your body. And you have a lot of these sphincter muscles. But mint is one of the worst things. Chocolate also is one of the worst things. And so another one is alcohol. All alcohol causes a relaxation of that sphincter muscle. So what else? One of the things that you can do that will help you figure out the particular foods that you have that you might be reacting negatively to is to keep a food journal. So write down what you eat. And then if you notice that you had more GERD that particular night, go back and look at what you ate. And you can probably see some patterns of things that you really like that you eat at night, and then the GERD is bad, the GERD is worse. And so if you start keeping a food journal, that can help you understand which foods you're particularly eating or you might have a reaction to, because food sensitivities are different from each person. And you need to know the ones that you have the worst. We just gave you some that are pretty universal for all people. but you may have some that are unique to you. Okay. If you write down these foods that you've eaten whenever you experience symptoms of acid reflux, then you can go back to that journal and you can look at the foods and you can say, oh man, I ate some peppermint and I really had a horrible night with GERD. Well, mint, we already talked about mint, but maybe you're even more susceptible than the average person to mint. And this includes any mint, peppermint, spearmint, you know, the little after dinner mints. I always thought that was fascinating because, you know, years ago, you don't see them as much anymore, but they would give you these after dinner mints. And I always thought, wow, that's really weird because you eat a little peppermint or whatever. And I think they did it more for your breath than anything else, but mint causes the relaxation of that sphincter muscle. And a lot of those old wives' tales that we believed, or I don't know that we believed them, but we were taught it when we were younger, it really aren't true at all. And a lot of them, we gave a seminar on sleep. I don't know, it was a local group here in Tucson that asked me to give a talk on sleep, and we did that. And almost all of the things that we were taught to eat at night to help you sleep, you know, most of them are not correct. You know, people will say, oh, I need a drink after work to relax so I can go to sleep. And the alcohol causes that relaxation of that sphincter muscle. It's also, alcohol is really, really high in sugar, and sugar disrupts the sleep cycle. So here's one that comes up in almost every single talk we do about digestion, is gluten. Now, in the PDFs that you will get, and if you've been to some of these in the past, we have given this out in the past also, but we're going to give you a list of gluten foods. Gluten is one of the worst things to cause leaky gut. Gluten is one of the worst things to cause acid reflux. The problem with our labeling laws in America is we're required by law to tell you what we put in your food. What we're not required is to tell you what we put in your food. So some of you may have heard this, but humor me. My wife puts ketchup on absolutely everything. So I was standing at the refrigerator one day, and on the door, the little racks that are on the door, there was a bottle of ketchup, because we always have ketchup in our household. And it said right on the label, it was Kroger's, because I think Kroger owns probably 2/3 of the grocery stores all across the United States. And here we go to Fry's, and Fry's is owned by Kroger's. And so right there it said Kroger's, a gluten-free food. And I knew that wasn't true. So I grabbed the bottle and I turned it around. Now Kroger's is not being fraudulent when they tell you this. The government has decided that there's only 13 grains that have gluten in it. So if it doesn't have one of those 13 grains, it's gluten-free, which isn't true at all. In the list, it's 5 pages long of what has gluten in it. So when I turned the bottle of ketchup around, it said natural flavorings. Well, there's gluten in natural flavorings, but the way our labeling laws is, they have to tell you that there's natural flavorings, but they don't have to tell you that there's gluten in the natural flavorings. So I've never talked to anybody who told me that they were off gluten, that once I give them the list of what actually has gluten in it, every one of them has said to me, well, good grief, I guess I'm not off gluten if all this stuff has it. So we have to be careful with this. But we do have a handout in the PDFs that we'll send you after this that will list all the foods that we have, or all the things that we put into our food. Most alcohol has gluten in it because almost all alcohol is made from grains. Let's talk a little bit about gluten. Gluten helps foods maintain their shape. So it's one of the major reasons that food manufacturers put gluten in food, is so that it can maintain its shape. If we want the food to be square, gluten will help it stay square, or a triangle, or whatever shape that we put the food. It also acts as a glue to hold the food together. So gluten is a binder, and it will hold foods together so they don't fall apart on your plate. So gluten is used mostly for a food additive to actually help hold foods together or help them hold their shape and stuff like that. So gluten is used in almost everything. I mean, in the list, you'll find most shampoos have gluten in it. Almost all makeup has gluten in it. Toothpaste has gluten in it. Gluten's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. So the cause of GERD can be associated with gluten allergies, intolerances, or sensitivity. Now, up until about, I don't know, probably maybe 20 years ago, the only people that anybody paid any attention to that had a problem with gluten is people that had celiac disease. But we now know that gluten sensitivity is a much bigger problem because most of those people don't realize that what they're reacting to is the gluten. Now, if you have celiac disease, I mean, they can't eat any gluten at all and they know right away, but it's the people who don't know that they are gluten sensitive. It's one of the requirements that we have in our program is we actually, gluten is something we don't want you to have in your diet in any way, shape, or form, because gluten causes leaky gut, gluten causes acid reflux, gluten causes a lot of problems. Okay, so as I said, in the handouts, we have all this stuff from gluten, and all of the list of the gluten in the handout comes from Dr. Osborne's book, and his book is called No Grain, No Pain. And we took all of that. He's devoted his entire life to gluten, and so we use him. You know, there's a little saying we have. What do you call it if you steal from one person? That's called plagiarism. What do you call it if you steal from many? It's called research. So I've done a lot of research on Dr. Osborne's work because he is the gluten expert and I'm not, and he's the guy. And we just take all that list right out of his book. Look at that. That's his book, No Grain, No Pain. I really, really recommend it. Not only does he give you lists of everything that has gluten in it, but he also gives you recipes. He gives you things to stay away from gluten. He has a Facebook page called the Gluten Free Society. He also has a web page called the Gluten Free Society. So I always tell people on these websites and on the Facebook page are swapping recipes back and forth. People will say, hey, I got to make a birthday cake. How can I make a birthday cake with no gluten? And other people that have been on the gluten-free diet longer will give them recipes. And so there's no shortage of recipes being passed around for free on the Gluten Free Society Facebook page or Gluten Free Society website. But this is his book. I really would recommend that you read it if you're interested in the gluten, because gluten is everywhere, and I mean, there's some other guys also that are really, really good with gluten. I know him. I've known him for a while, and he is really, really solid when it comes to gluten. And it's all based in science. It's not based upon just symptoms, stuff like that. He actually talks in the book about the science and how the science, why it's bad for you and what it does and things like that. Gluten is a lectin. The other place that you hear a lot about lectins is the plant paradox. That book talks a lot about all the other lectins. Gluten is just one lectin, but it's the most prolific lectin, and that's the one we tell people to stay away from. So what about acid reflux and lifestyle? Okay. So Kevin Gassimi, a gastroenterologist, this is the lifestyle things that he talks about that cause acid reflux. All alcohol, all nicotine, caffeine, they are all attributed to being severe causes of reflux or heartburn. Okay. What is that? We talked about it a little bit, but it's a ring of muscle that sits on top of your stomach that should allow food to go into the stomach, but then should close off and not allow food to go back from the stomach into that esophagus. So we've probably all heard of mitral valve prolapse. Well, that's the same thing. It's a one-way valve in your heart, and what it should do is prevent blood that gets put into the lower chambers of your heart from going back up into the upper chambers, or vice versa, from the upper chambers to the lower chambers. And if we have a leak, one of the terms that we call that is mitral valve prolapse. And if it gets too bad, they have to actually go in and replace that valve. Some of you may have seen that kind of reflux. It's different from what we're talking about, but it's exactly the same thing. So the problem with alcohol, nicotine, and caffeine is that they relax the esophageal sphincter muscle. We talked about that. But anything, mint, alcohol, nicotine, tobacco, things like that, all cause that muscle to relax. And when the muscle relaxes, that is what will allow the food or the acid. That's what we really care about, is the acid going back up. But if the food is saturated with acid and the food goes back up in the esophagus, that can cause the exact same problem. So let's talk about stress. Stress causes the body to draw blood away from the stomach because it feeds the muscles and the brain. So if there's a saber-tooth tiger in front of me, I don't want to send blood to the digestive tract. I want to take that blood, put it in my muscles, put it in my brain, so I can run away faster, or I can think of a way to get away from that saber-tooth tiger. So when we have stress, that causes us to shut down the digestive tract. And if we take the blood away from the digestive tract and leave the food sitting in the stomach, that can also cause that GERD and that reflux. Stress is huge, okay? Stress is enormous. So what can we do for stress? There's many different things that we can do for stress. We can do deep breathing, okay? The breathing thing is kind of fascinating. It's called a 4, 7, and 4, okay? 4, 7, and 8, I'm sorry. So you want to draw blood. You want to draw breath in through the nose to a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you want to hold that breath for the count of 7. So, and you don't want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You want to 1, 2, 3. And then you want to breathe out really, really slow. You breathe out through the mouth to a count of 8. So you should take twice as long to exhale the air as you did to inhale the air. And as stress gets going, our breath gets shorter, our breath gets higher in our chest. And when you force yourself to slow down by deep breathing exercises, you're calming stress. So a smoker, one of the things that they'll tell you is, oh, well, I smoke to relax. It's something I do to relax. And what it is a smoker takes deep breaths, right? They take that breath off the cigarette and they take it deeply into their lungs. Well, we could create the same stress relief just with deep breathing, with no cigarette, right? So into the nose for 4, hold it for a count of 7, exhale through the mouth for a count of 8. Okay, so do this. Set this up to set a timer to where the timer goes off every so often, and you just stop what you're doing and you do the deep breathing. It's amazing how much this can change your stress level because we're being conscious of trying to reduce it. What are some other things we can do? Yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, meditation. The casina, I think I got a picture of the casina here, yes. This is what I personally use to control stress. Casina is a system that puts both auditory and visual stimulation into you and causes the brain to go into theta brain waves, which is what we want through meditation. So I just never was able to sit down and think of nothing and calm my brain. My meditation period that I struggled with for a while, it became one of the most stressful times in my day. This casina has been a godsend for me. We actually have one in our office, and I want my patients anyway, I want them to actually try it because some people hate the thing. They just don't like it at all, and other people think it's really, really great. So website down there at the bottom, mindplace.com, okay? And that is where you can go to get the casino. I always tell people, if you know the casino works for you and you want to, go to eBay. Lots of people buy these things thinking they're going to use it, and then they don't. And so they put it on eBay and they sell it for half what you could buy it for brand new. And most of the time they're in good shape. I dropped my casino, gosh, I don't know, probably maybe close to a year ago now. And I ordered another one off of eBay for about half what I bought my first one. And then I was able to put my original one back together with rubber bands and glue. And so that one works. And that's the one we keep down here. But the casino has been a lifesaver for me. I'm definitely a type A person. And so I commit 2 20-minute sessions a day to relaxation. Now, do you need to use a casino? No, it's just one of the options. If you like Tai Chi, there's all kinds of articles written by the Mayo Clinic about how yoga causes stress to be reduced and Tai Chi causes stress to be reduced and Qigong. If you're interested in pursuing that a little bit, you just go on, Google or something and type in Mayo Clinic yoga reducing stress or something like that. And they got all these articles and everything done by the Mayo Clinic on how these things. So what you do to control stress is less important than doing something to control stress. Most people are stressed out of their mind and they don't realize it. Stress has become so normal in the Western part of the world that most people are stressed, but we've adapted to it now. And so people don't even think that they are stressed. Okay. Diaphragmatic breathing, yoga breathing. So you can actually Google these things, right? But we gave you the basics, 4, 7, and 8. 4 in through the nose, 7 hold it, 8 exhale through the mouth. But there's a lot of different systems and things like that for breathing. So if you want to actually try to reduce some stress, you can go online and you can Google anything on deep breathing, and there's all kinds of different systems. People even try to sell you stuff to how to teach you to breathe. It's just amazing what people will sell you. Okay, so how about counting your breaths? Take a few deep breaths, then settle into a pattern of normal breathing. When you exhale, count 1. And the next time you exhale, 2. The next time you exhale, 3. What this is actually doing is focusing the brain on something besides what we're all stressed out about. It's the whole idea of counting sheep, right? The reason that most people can't get back to sleep is because their brain is going 100 miles an hour. And so everybody's heard the thing about counting sheep, but the reason it works is because you're focusing your brain on something that is completely boring, but it's not allowing your brain to go out and focus on the bills and the coronavirus and all the things that people are stressing about. Okay. So deep breathing, relaxation is huge. This can be so good at helping you relax, which when you relax more and try to remove yourself from stress, you have less GERD, less reflux. Okay. So now what we're going to try to give you, so these were different things that can cause it: eating late, eating spicy foods, nicotine, tobacco, alcohol, things like that. We gave you some things that you can do or eat that can cause it. Then we talked about stress being a big cause one. And we talked about different ways that you can try to control your stress. Gave you several different ideas. And pick one. It doesn't matter which one that you use. It just matters that you do it. And people say to me all the time, I'm not stressed. I know I'm not stressed. But yet we have an actual test called the adrenal cortisol test, which actually the body tells us whether it's stressed or not. And we may not feel stressed, but almost always the people that tell me they're not stressed the most are the ones that have the worst adrenal results, because they are stressed, they just don't know it. So let's say we have acid reflux. Now the medical model will, take a Prilosec or take a protein pump inhibitor. That's what most of these are. But here's some natural things that you can actually do naturally that will help reduce reflux if you actually have the burning. So digestive enzymes. If you take digestive enzymes, that can prevent the GERD from happening in the first place. Probiotics is another thing that can help prevent the GERD to start with. Chamomile tea, ginger tea. Now remember, ginger was nature's Dramamine. I commercial fished up in Alaska, oh gosh, long time ago. And when I went up there, I got seasick, right? I was getting horribly seasick. So I went to the doctor, and the doctor gave me a prescription for these little patches that you put behind your ear, and it was called Transderm Scope. And supposedly, if I put this thing behind my ear, I wouldn't get seasick. So I went out on the boat and I put that thing behind my ear and I was worse sick than I was. So what we actually did, one guy on the boat, he'd been up there, commercial fishing for 100 million years. And he said, just get some ginger, grate it up and put the ginger on your tongue or underneath your tongue and just kind of let it go through those sublingual glands and then swallow it. And I did that, and ginger worked better than the prescription that the doctor gave me. If you get seasick or motion sickness or reflux, ginger tea really, really helps this. How about papaya leaf tea? Papaya also has some of the enzymes in it that will actually help reduce GERD, okay? Magnesium complex supplements. So we talked earlier, a lack of magnesium can cause GERD. So if you take magnesium, sometimes for some people that helps enormously in preventing acid reflux from happening altogether. L-glutamine. Okay, L-glutamine is another thing. It helps heal leaky gut and benefits both ulcerative colitis and IBS. And all of these things that we know of from the day, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, all of these things cause or can be a cause of this reflux. And so anything that helps heal that, and that's where L-glutamine and magnesium, those are huge to help heal the gut, okay, and help prevent the heartburn symptoms from happening in the first place. So let's review these real quick. So if some natural things that you can do that will help prevent GERD: digestive enzymes, probiotics, chamomile tea, ginger tea, papaya leaf tea, magnesium, and L-glutamine. Okay, now these are things that you can take. Now, is it going to stop the problem? It's going to help the problem, but this is patching the symptom. What we're going to talk about later on today, in a few minutes here, we're going to talk about how we can actually heal it so that we don't get it in the first place. And then you don't have to go through drinking mint tea and stuff like this to prevent it from happening. We can just fix it, okay? And that's something that I think everybody wants to do. And so that's where functional medicine is really carving out a niche for itself, is because functional medicine is the quality of life doctors. So our medical world is excellent about emergency room type stuff. This coronavirus is perfect for our traditional medical model. They are good about breaking the genetic structure of it down, and they'll figure out how to kill it and stuff like that. And so what happens with this is, what we need to do is, they're also very good about putting my bones back together if I get in a car accident. But by their own admission, they're losing the battle with chronic disease. And one of the things with chronic disease is GERD. It's a reflux, and that is one of the problems that you can actually have. That the functional medicine specializes in getting to the cause of the problem. And that's what we're going to talk about here in a minute. So can't I just take a pill? I mean, that's what every American wants to do. Just give me a pill. I don't want to actually have to do anything. So the natural doctors are beginning to talk about protein pump inhibitors. Now, protein pump inhibitors is part of in your stomach, which kicks out the acid. So what they're doing when you take a protein pump inhibitor is you block the formation of acid in your stomach. And this is what we're going to talk about, because this is where it really gets different from what the medical doctors are telling us, okay? Because if I need acid to, well, we're going to talk about it here in a minute, but if I need acid to help break down my food and sterilize my food and all this kind of stuff, and we limit the acid that you have, what we're actually doing to help the symptom of GERD is we're decreasing your efficiency of digestion. And because we're not fixing the problem, we're eliminating the acid from being in the stomach, so I don't get Barrett's esophagitis, and I don't get that acid to go back up into my esophagus. So what we want to do is figure out, why in the world am I having this to start with? So do you want to take Tums or Rolaids or anything like that? No. And Prilosec and protein pump inhibitors, these are all the same things. They just have a different mechanism, right? The protein pump inhibitors block the formation of acid. Tums, Rolaids, Prilosec, things like this, those things dilute the acid that's in your stomach. and that helps so you don't have as much burning and stuff like that. So what are some things naturally that you can do instead of an antacid? Apple cider vinegar. We always recommend Bragg's. Bragg's is by far the best apple cider vinegar out there. I don't think he was a doctor, but Mr. Bragg, I don't know what his first name was, but he actually wrote a book all about apple cider vinegar. Now, some people like the taste of apple cider vinegar. I hate the taste of apple cider vinegar, but it's so good for you that every morning I take apple cider vinegar, even though I just hate the taste of it. Another natural remedy that you can do instead of taking a Tums or Rolaids, Prilosec, stuff like that, is baking soda. Baking soda can help relieve and dilute the acid in that stomach, and it'll help the symptoms. How about aloe vera? Aloe vera has soothing. You know, you put it on burns, you put it on stuff like this. Well, if my stomach's on fire and I take some aloe vera, then what we can do is that will actually help calm it down also, okay? So now we're going to talk about actually fixing it. So we talked about a lot of things to help you with the symptoms. We talked about things that help prevent it from coming on to start with, you know, alcohol and smoking and mints and things like this. We talked about things that you can do naturally that will help alleviate the symptoms. We talked about stress and all these kind of things. But wouldn't we just like to fix the problem to start with? So we don't even have to do all that monkey motion, and because we don't have GERD to start with. So these are some signs that you have. We're going to show you Dr. Gaby here or Dr. Wright actually here I've got a picture of him in his book, but Dr. Gaby and Dr. Wright, two medical doctors up in the state of Washington, what they figured out was 99% of GERD comes from people that don't have enough acid in their stomach. And what we're doing is we're trying to dilute or stop the acid from being produced ever, or dilute what we do have so we don't get that regurgitation. So if what they're saying is correct, and it's been proven now scientifically, but if what they're saying is correct is we don't have enough stomach acid to start with, and then we dilute or prevent the body from making more, what we've now done is guaranteed that we will have GERD the next meal. But here are some symptoms that can actually tell you, some outward symptoms that can tell you if you have low stomach acid. What's the first one? Heartburn and indigestion, which is exactly what we're talking about here. People think, oh, I have too much acid, that's why I have heartburn and indigestion. What Dr. Gaby and Dr. Wright showed is it's not enough acid is most of the time what causes this. Brittle hair or brittle fingernails, feeling unusually full after just a small little part of a meal or a snack. People eat a snack and they just feel stuffed. How about belching, bloating after the meals? How about constipation, diarrhea after heavy meals? So hypochlorhydria, hypo means not enough, and chlorhydria is the name for hydrochloric acid. And so what we're saying when we talk about hypochlorhydria is you don't have enough stomach acid. And look at what the number one symptom of not having enough stomach acid is: heartburn and indigestion. And we got Tums and Rolaids and Prilosec and protein pump inhibitors, and all these things are lowering the stomach acid that we do have. What if one of the major reasons that we have this to start with is we don't have enough stomach acid, and then we're trying to dilute it even farther? So it's kind of contrary to what the science is actually showing. You may have low stomach acid if you suffer from one of the more. Acid indigestion, again, we're talking about the same thing. Intolerance to certain foods, okay? I get gassy when eating certain foods. Frequent belching, feeling full, feeling like the food isn't moving along. I know it's kind of stuck in my stomach. Gastroesophageal reflux. This all comes from the Mayo Clinic. These are the symptoms that they tell you that can come out from low stomach acid. Have to frequently take anti-acid drugs. Low stomach acid. I frequently have to take anti-acid drugs. Fingernails crack easy. Vitiligo, that's the change of the skin, where you lose your skin pigmentation. Acne, rosacea. gum inflammation or receding gums. So periodontitis, you can actually, that can be caused because of low stomach acid, okay? So what does stomach acid do? Why do we need it in the first place? Well, stomach acid serves several different functions. Now, number one, it sterilizes our food, right? If there's anything in that food, the acid will kill it. So if I have a bug in the food or something, the acid can actually kill it, sterilize my food. It prepares your vitamins and minerals to be absorbed. If you don't have enough stomach acid, we can be low in selenium and zinc and things like this. It breaks the food down farther. Stomach acid breaks all food down, but stomach acid is predominantly used to break down protein. So if we eat protein, we need stomach acid to break that down. It helps break down, sugars and fats also, but predominantly we use enzymes to break down sugars. We use hydrochloric acid to break down protein, and we use bile to break down fat. So those are what we use. Now, hydrochloric acid, they all kind of cross a little bit, but those are the primary things that each one of those do. It also stimulates, hydrochloric acid stimulates the pancreas to excrete bicarbonate. So let me talk about this for just a minute. We talked about that mucosal lining on the inside of your stomach. This is why the hydrochloric acid doesn't burn through the sides of your stomach. But there is no lining inside the small intestines or on the other end, the esophagus. So we can't move things acidic up into the esophagus. That's what we're talking about with this, this webinar today is GERD. But we also can't move things that are acidic into the small intestines. So if we have enough hydrochloric acid, this causes the pancreas to kick out bicarbonate to lower the acid content in our food so that food can move from the stomach into the small intestines and it won't burn a hole through the small intestines. Now, if we don't have enough acid, Tums, Rolaids, Prilosec, protein pump inhibitors, what happens? The food can't move from the stomach into the small intestines. So the food, and if the pancreas doesn't kick out the bicarbonate because there isn't enough acid to stimulate the pancreas to do that, what does the food do? The food now has to sit in the stomach longer until the acid naturally decreases so the food can be moved from the stomach into the small intestines and not burn a hole through it. Well, guess what? If the food sits in the stomach a longer period of time, that can cause GERD also. So by lowering stomach acid, we're actually increasing the time that the food spends in the stomach, which can cause GERD. We're actually, the stomach isn't built to hold food. The stomach is built to churn the food up and start the digestion process of the sugars, the proteins, and the fats. And then once it's all churned up and properly broke down, it should move into the small intestines where the food can be absorbed through the small intestines, get into the bloodstream so that it feeds the mitochondria, the little power plants of the cells. So this is what stomach acid is actually used for. So this is at Tahoma Clinic, and there's the web address right there. This is Dr. Wright, Jonathan V. Wright. You can see that on the book. This is a book that he wrote. And they are the doctors, both of, Dr. Gaby is the guy with Dr. Wright in the past who actually figured out that 99 people out of 100 don't have enough hydrochloric acid. That's why they have GERD. So since 1 out of 100 have too much hydrochloric acid, the medical doctors just dilute everybody's acid for that 1 out of 100, that if they gave them more acid, that would make their GERD even worse. So listen to me, please. I am not telling you to go out and buy some hydrochloric acid pills, some betaine acid with pepsin or something like that. I'm not telling you to do this, because if you happen to be that one person out of 100 that has too much acid, you are actually going to make your GERD worse. And we don't want that, because if you've had GERD for a lot of years and we make it worse, that can make the problem much worse, and we might even get cancer of the esophagus. So what you need to do is go to a doctor who can actually check all this stuff for you and make sure that you're not one of those people, very rare, but one of those people that have too much acid. So the medical doctors just assume everybody does to be on the safe side. And 99 people out of 100, with that assumption, it makes sure that they have GERD next meal, which just prolongs the process. I guess that makes the the Tums company happy because the Tums company gets to keep selling you Tums. So there's actually a 3-step process of fixing any digestive problem. We're talking about GERDs here, but leaky gut. We've got to seal the gut. We have to heal the holes in the gut before you can ever have any permanent lasting results. So this is why most people are spending so much money, wasting money, taking probiotics and yogurt and prebiotics and all this enzymes and all this kind of stuff. And they're taking it, which will help them feel a little bit better. But if you still got holes in your gut, if you still have bugs that shouldn't be in your gut that are in there, you can do the building of the microbiome forever, but it's never going to stay built because you didn't do the first 2 steps. So the first thing that we have to do, and I look at leaky gut, it's like a hose that we take an ice pick to. So, right, we poke holes in the hose and then water comes out the hose. Well, the gut is the same way. And if you have holes in the gut, we call this leaky gut, those food particles and bugs and all kinds of stuff can transfer from the intestinal system into the bloodstream. We don't want that. So the first thing we have to do, if we're going to do lasting value and permanent healing of the gut, is we have to seal the holes and heal those holes so there aren't holes there anymore. The second part is we must kill any bugs that are in the system that shouldn't be there. The 2 tests that we run for this is a SIBO test, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth test, and a GI map test. So the SIBO looks at the small intestines, the GI map test looks at the large intestines. And so we can have bacterial overgrowth in the small or the large intestines. And again, if you have bugs that shouldn't be there in your small intestines or your large intestines, trying to rebuild your microbiome is all for naught. It's just a complete waste of money and time. Once you get it healed, you got to seal and heal the gut. Then you get rid of everything that's in there that shouldn't be there. You know, Clostridium difficile, H. pylori, all the bugs, yeast overgrowth, all this kind of stuff that shouldn't be there. You got to get rid of that first. Then what you do is rebuild the microbiome. And it's a 3-step process. We actually have a process in our clinic. We have a whole program that we do that just focuses on these 3 steps. It's called Trust Your Gut. And it goes through, it seals and heals, then it eliminates the bugs, and then it rebuilds the microbiome. And in the PDF handouts will be a little flyer on that program, okay? And you can, if you have any questions on my website, TucsonFunctionalMedicine.com, you can go in and actually book a free discovery appointment. We give away a free discovery appointment to anybody who wants one. I just don't think that you should have to pay money to find out that you don't like me or functional medicine isn't a good fit for you. So we do lots of these discovery appointments on Zoom. That's what we're using right here to do this talk. And so we do, that's how I get patients all over the world. I actually have people that live here in Tucson that don't come into the office. We do all their talks on Zoom. So the day of having to go to a doctor's office is pretty much over now. We can send you the test to your house. You can take the test. We get the results. We upload the results into your portal. You download them. We do a Zoom call. You're looking at the results right in front of you. I'm looking at the results in front of me. I can share my screen just like what I did for this presentation. And we can actually go over these. And we don't even have to be in the same room anymore that we can do this. So the internet has been amazing. Okay. The internet has allowed there's very few functional medicine doctors in America or in the world, right? Anybody can say they practice functional medicine, but there are 2 schools that actually certify functional medicine practitioners. One is the Institute of Functional Medicine and the other is Functional Medicine University. So if you're going to go to a functional medicine doctor's, make sure that they are actually certified. Anybody can say, oh yeah, I practice functional medicine. So what we've done here is we've given you some causes of leaky gut. We've given you some natural things that you can do to help the symptoms of the leaky gut. And we've also given you the actual secret of fixing the gut. Okay. So if there's any questions in that question and answer box, you can type your questions and we can cover them. We have about 6 minutes left in the webinar here. But we've given you a lot of different tools today. But in reality, the best way to do it is to heal the actual problem. Then you don't even have to worry about it anymore. So is there any questions out there? So if there is, type them in the Q&A box and we will answer them before we leave. So remember, in your PDFs will be a handout on our Trust Your Gut program. We also have a 6-month program called a Total Health program that actually we do all the same things, but that's a broader program than just your digestive tract.